It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Got an interesting email. The headline, the subject line caught my attention. Long national nightmare over. And it got me to thinking about the worldview of the folks who want that email. And look, it's a right-wing group that I've gotten emails for years from a popular, familiar, I'm not going to say popular, a familiar right-wing figure pushing what is an extreme corporate position, an extreme authoritarian position, an extreme, warmongering agenda. But, hey, this long nightmare is over, is their mantra. And, it got me, into a conversation with a friend about, the people that would want this. And, I've said for a very long time, because I believe this. You go back to 2016 when Trump won then, and nobody gave him a chance. There's no way, the American working class isn't going to have a billionaire as their champion. A guy who has screwed them in every way possible. The American working class would never embrace that. They would never embrace the boss running the country, the guy who's cheated them at every turn. No, they would, and they did. And I remember, and I've told this story a bunch. In April when my grandmother passed away, I went back for the funeral, and my family, otherwise known as the basket of deplorables, they were enthusiastically supporting Trump. And look, racism, homophobia, misogyny, all those things. Yeah. To varying degrees all over that map. But it never, that never got their attention before. What got their attention was that life was going to be what they were promised. They lived through the downfall of the American manufacturing dominance. They had those good union jobs that were all up and down Brook Park Avenue, the Ford plant, the Chevy plant, the hundreds of feeder factories that went into that were paying good, solid, upper middle class, if you have to use that frame, wages, with health care and retirement and vacations and sick time and all kinds of. And the kids needed a day off. They were able to go. It was television life. It was Leave It to Beaver kind of stuff. What they heard from Trump is he was going to recreate that. What he sold them on the vision that everything you believed that was your birthright, you're going to get. We're going to bring all those jobs back. And what they heard is all those union jobs are coming back, and all of that prosperity is coming back. And then our lives will be great. Then our lives will be full. And I've often said that, depending on which hat you wear, has everything to do with where you see yourself. I look at myself as someone who's extremely grateful for where I am in my life. As a kid, grew up in a housing project. We were poor, and we knew we were poor. One of those things. Well, I didn't know how poor we were. No, when you go to the cupboards and there's nothing there, you're poor. And I've been very grateful that through my work, through my labor, through a little bit of hustle, I lead a life that I could not have imagined as a child. So I'm grateful for everything that I've had the opportunity to do and to be a part of. And I find that people who think the way that I do, that I'm grateful for where I am, for what I have, for the people I have around me. And I'm even more grateful given the tragedy that we're going through in my life for things that I have. The fact that my wife is still, after 19 weeks, lying in a hospital bed. I'm still grateful for my union's insurance that is ensuring she gets the best care possible. The fact that that I've been able to muster through all this because we had some savings, because I made decent wages and was able to put some of that aside. The fact that I'm still able to take care of the children, and we're moving in a direction to help her and ultimately ourselves. I'm grateful for those things. I could be bitter, I could be angry, I could do a lot of things, but ultimately I'm grateful for where we are. I do believe that when people feel as I do, and you may agree, that you look at your life and go, you know what? I may not have got everything I want. I may not be the millionaire I was hoping to be. I may not have, made the NFL like I wanted to, but I'm grateful for where I am. And I see life as hopeful, and I see optimism for a future. I see an opportunity to make things better for my kids, and I'm excited about the people that they're going to be and who they'll become and the opportunities that lay ahead of them. I think if you view life through that lens, you're more apt to be a Democratic voter on the left, a liberal, or just, not irrational. I think if you come from a perspective of life isn't what I was told it was going to be. My birthright was supposed to be riches, was supposed to be anything I want. The world is my oyster. Everyone can be president. You go down the list of things we were told as kids. And some people internalize that, and they demand that. And sadly, they look back at their years and go, well, it wasn't everything I was told it was going to be. It was hard. And it's getting harder every day. I think you're then more apt to listen to someone like Donald Trump and have those grievances that somehow life didn't turn out the way I had hoped it would. I haven't gotten everything I wanted, and therefore it's someone else's fault. So we're going to go after the immigrants. We're going to go after the other. We're going to go after poor working people. We're going to look behind us and go, it's all them. They're holding me back. And when someone like Elon Musk comes out and says, hey, we're going to have a universal high income and you can get everything you want. The world is yours. You can have everything. There'll be unlimited goods and services. All you have to do is figure out how to make your life meaningful. That's alluring. That's something I think that, most people would go, yeah, how do I get that? Without asking the question of, we're the wealthiest country in the history of humanity. How come we're not anywhere closer to that now? How come there are no Trump hospitals? How come there are no Elon Musk libraries? How come there are no Jeff Bezos educational facilities? How come none of our billionaires have taken on, homelessness for veterans or hunger for children? How come we've done none of those things to get to that place that, Elon Musk is selling? Unlimited goods and service, all you want. It's nirvana. It's heaven on earth, and it's just yours. It's your birthright. And look, understand, I do believe a lot of people think in those terms, that they should be entitled to all of this as their birthright. And that when it didn't come, and they are struggling, because understand, American workers are struggling. And this is where I've been saying this for 20 years now. As wages have been declining over and over, and as we've been stagnating, and life has gotten more expensive as inflation continues to go up and wages continue to stagnate and go down, as housing prices continue to go up, and, people's ability to buy get much harder, especially when you're talking about the middle to the lower end of the working class. The people who are punching a clock every week trying to figure out how to make ends meet, and it never happens. So I understand the anger. I understand that things are hard. Hard for me too. But to say that the billionaire class, the CEO class, the people who have caused this, the people who have built this, that they're going to be our saviors, seems kind of dumb. Someone threw up at me at Stockholm Syndrome. Yeah, to a degree. We have identified with our captors in the hopes that one day we will be one of them. And maybe one of us will win the lottery and be one of them for a short time. And as I've always said when I've done organizing work in the past, and someone says, well, we don't need no stinking union, I'm only staying a couple of months. How about making it better now so that if you do stay in 6 months, it's better then? Or when you leave, it's better for someone else. And I think this also is when we have to divide ourselves into red hats and blue hats. Another one of those dividing things. Is it all about me? Did you people of my generation, did you buy greed is good? Did you buy the one with the most toys when they die wins? Did you buy that? Hooray for me and the heck with society? Did you buy that argument? And if you did, you were happy on Inauguration or Dictator Day this year. You were thrilled that your dictator was going to give you everything you wanted and abuse those that you view as the cause of your struggle. Now, I've talked about this with others, over the years because I've believed this for a very long time. The question is, how do we get people to be grateful again? How do we get people to be happy with what they have and to strive for more in a way that doesn't look at someone who's doing all right and pushing them back? Now you go, but Rick, no, I hear you say that. But you're talking about taxing Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. Yeah, I am. And that's not out of, I don't think that they should have wealth. I think having that kind of outpowering wealth, having that kind of sway in our politics to buy elections, that kind of sway to be able to buy the best government money can buy is dangerous for democracy. I'm not saying their children should go hungry. I'm not even saying their great-great-great-great-grandchildren should go hungry. But maybe, as a member of society, we should say that, some who have been given a lot, we should be requiring a lot from. Now, I'm not saying that Musk should be out on the corner with a tin cup and pencils. But $500 billion? $500 billion? When there are children who are starving, when there are veterans who are homeless, when there are families who are living in their cars, when you've got workers who are every day going and punching the clock and working hard and still falling deeper and deeper into debt. Yeah, I think we've got a distribution problem. And if we can have that kind of enormous billionaire class who right now is going to get everything that they want, and then some. The rest of us, maybe just a little. And look, I listened to Elon Musk talk about this utopia of the guaranteed maximum income, guaranteed high income. And it's alluring. Yeah, look, I would love to make enough money that money didn't matter to me. I would love to have everything my heart could desire. And all I have to do is figure out how to make it meaningful to me. Would love the opportunity to do that. But do I think it's possible? One, no. And if it is, why aren't we working toward that actively? Because what we're actually doing right now in this moment, just so we're completely aware, is they're talking about cutting taxes on rich people again. And who always ends up picking the bag up? It's always working people. It's you, it's me, it's us. So yeah, they promised us 99-cent eggs and $1 gas. Still waiting. I checked today. Ain't happening. They promised us costs are coming down. They're the CEOs. They're the ones who could do it literally with the flick of a switch. Still hasn't happened. But we will see. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Do you agree? Based on where your mindset is, kind of decides on where you vote? Because look, I always was told, and this is just one of those asides, I go back to my high school government teacher. He said, when asked, how do you know which party you're with? He said, look, Democrats are for the very poor and big government. Republicans are for the very rich and corporate interests and small government. And you folks in the middle are going to pay for both. So which are you closer to being? Are you closer to being the Bezoses and the Musks and the big corporate interest, or the guy on the corner with the tin cup and the pencils? And for the vast majority, I'm thinking the pencils. But I do want to hear your thoughts. Send me the crazy of the crazy. I'm enjoying all of the talk about Trump not having his hand on the Bible and some kind of rewriting of history. It's comical, it's entertaining, but also quite saddening. But I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it's only been a couple of days and already, man, it feels like months. And look, we're going to get tired. We're going to get tired of the shenanigans, of the clown car, of the circus. Going to get tired of it. And it's going to weigh on us. It's going to bring people down. Stay diligent. Because understand, the things that he is doing and is going to do, not popular. For instance, he went and did all these pardons. Now, the day Biden pardoned a bunch of people, the MAGAs were like, you shouldn't need to pardon people. People shouldn't break the law to need to be pardoned. There were memes everywhere. And I simply said, well, wait till Trump takes office, and then I want to hear you reiterate that. Oddly enough, a lot of people are. The latest Reuters Ipsos poll shows that 58% of Americans not thrilled with Trump pardoning the January 6th criminals. And look, the police unions who have backed him, the Fraternal Order of Police, the largest police union in the country, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, they not happy, denounced the pardons, and in a very forceful way. Now understand, Republicans fell in line because it's what they do. But it kind of is a mockery of our justice system. It kind of is a mockery of law enforcement. Now remember, these are the people who back law enforcement. Kind of going to be a hard sell to say, yeah, we saw the videos of those cops being crushed and beaten and all of that. But, how did Trump say it? F it? Release them all? And you've got some almost 1,600 defendants that the Justice Department and prosecutors and federal law enforcement and federal judges have all gone to move on. Just F it. Release them all. More than 1,000 guilty pleas. More than 200 guilty verdicts via trial. All that, just F it. Release them all. And the thing that I find really kind of interesting, and I keep saying this, pay attention, because even the red hats are going to go, well, I keep coming back to, and I'm going to keep saying this, you're going to get tired of it, but you're going to eventually go, yeah, he's right. They're going to do what they're going to do. They are going to pursue the most aggressive, the most demeaning, they're going to pursue evil. It's who they are. It's what they're going to do. They're going to cause great pain, great suffering, and out of their savagery, we will come up with solutions on how to move forward. I do believe that, because I do believe that even the red hats, once you get past their anger and you get past, some of that, a lot of them are still decent people. And I know angry emails are coming, but I know a lot of these folks. I live around them. These are the people who will come and be helpful. They're just going to need some time. And they're going to need to see with their own eyes the damage that's being done. And this is part of it. This is part of it. Also, I'm sure everyone has seen the viral video from Tuesday's interfaith prayer service at the Washington National Cathedral, where a a bishop, this Marianne Edgar Budd, just, I know there are a lot of people who are saying that she dressed him down. There are a lot of people who are saying that she tore into him. I know there's a lot of that clickbaity kind of wording to go look. I know there's a lot of that out there, but when I watched her, this was a person of faith saying, hey, maybe not. When she said, let me make one final plea, Mr. President. Millions have put their trust in you. In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are now scared. I don't see a problem with that. She points out that there are gay and lesbian, transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives. She is not wrong. And when she turns to the immigrants, the people who pick our crops, as she said, who clean our office buildings, who wash the dishes after we're eating in the restaurants and work the night shift at hospitals, she's not wrong to say that these are folks who do the work, who are now afraid. As she points out, they may not be citizens or have proper documentation, but the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. And she says, look, I ask you to have mercy. Have mercy on those in our community whose citizens fear that their parents will be taken away. She goes on to say, and that you help those who are fleeing war and persecution in their own lands and find compassion and welcome. She points out that our God teaches us that we are to be merciful to the stranger, for we were all once strangers in this land. And you listen to this about 2 minute 15 second just plea of saying, hey, I'm asking for your better parts. I'm asking for better angels to help lift you. I didn't see it as dressing him down or any of that stuff. I didn't see that as something that ripped into him. I saw it as any person of faith going, have compassion, have mercy, show some grace. All of those things that the fundamentals, the bedrock of what Christianity, as I learned, as I grew up believing. I grew up in the Catholic Church that was, at the time, about peace and social justice. The church hath swung a bit, but I still believe that bedrock is still there. And that's all this woman did. That's all this bishop did, was say, please have mercy. Before you do the things that you're saying you're going to do, that you're inclined to do, that you want to do, maybe a little restraint. Maybe be a decent human being. Look, I think we all agree if there are criminals here who are breaking the law, that we should deal with them. But as she pointed out, there are people who are doing the jobs that most Americans won't. So how did Donald Trump respond? Well, how Donald Trump always responds. On Truth Social. And his truth read like this. The so-called bishop who spoke at the National Prayer Service on Tuesday morning was a radical left, hardline Trump hater. She brought her church into the world of politics in a very ungracious way. She was nasty in tone and not compelling or smart. She failed to mention the large number of illegal migrants that came into our country and killed people. Many were deposited from jails and mental institutions. It is a giant crime wave that is taking place in the USA. Apart from her inappropriate statements, the service was very boring and uninspiring. She is not very good at her job. She and her church owe the public an apology. Now, again, this is classic Donald Trump. Attack her personally, not very smart. Oh, must be radical left, Trump hater. Her church is bad, she's failed. That's the hard line. That's his go-to. You know what he didn't really address? What she was talking about. Are there criminals here in this country from other countries? Yes. And we should deal with them, and we will. But the vast, vast majority of people who are here are just trying to fight for a better life, are just trying to find a way to feed their children, keep a roof over their head. The same thing all of us are trying to do. And to lump them all together as Trump does, as my red crew does, is, well, typical. It's who they are. Now, what's interesting is Republicans fell right into line. In fact, you had Mike Collins, the Republican from Georgia, who called for an Episcopal diocese bishop to be deported. Let that sink in for a second. And understand what the message is. This woman's a U.S. citizen. As I understand, born, raised, everything here. His response is to deport them. So understand what this message is sending is, yeah, we're going to go after them first. But if you disagree with us, if you get in our way, going after birthright citizenship, if you have the audacity, the unmitigated gall to speak out against dear leader, to speak out against our mission, well, you know what? You may be finding your way on a boat somewhere. You may find yourself on a plane going who knows where. That's a warning shot, I think. But hey, it's just Mike Collins, a Republican member of Congress from Georgia. Quick break. Right back.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I got to come back to churches. Evidently, we're going to be kicking in the doors of churches to go after those immigrants. And I don't know. I seem to remember learning throughout history that everyone kind of respected, the church as that place for sanctuary. That's where you ran to, for a little bit of cover. And now we've got Trump saying, nope, schools, churches, we don't care. We're going to start kicking things in. And it will be an interesting image. And I got to tell you, I wonder how the church going folk are going to like the thought that maybe the doors are going to get kicked in and they're going to come down the aisles scrutinizing who's in the pews. Interesting time. But here to share some thoughts on where we are, especially from the standpoint of rule of law. Look, I've been saying that when Trump said nothing will stand in our way, I truly believe he means nothing. And here to share some thoughts are my good friend Ian Millhiser. Ian's a senior correspondent over at Vox. He's also the author of The Agenda, How a Republican Supreme Court is Reshaping America. I would argue it needs to be updated, how it's already reshaped America. Ian, thanks for taking time for us.
It's good to be here. Thanks, Rick.
So, you write that book, and and this is years ago, you saw this stuff coming.
Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, it's gotten worse. The Trump immunity case, the decision where the Supreme Court said that Trump can use the powers of the presidency to commit a wide range of crimes and nothing can be done to him because of it, surprised me. I didn't think that the Supreme Court was this deep in the tank for him. I didn't think that this court was this partisan. And now we know. And obviously, if Trump wants to abuse the powers that the Supreme Court has given him, there's a tremendous amount that he can do. I am waiting to see whether the court is even deeper in the tank for him than I thought. I think the next big bellwether that I'm looking at is this birthright citizenship order, where he's claimed that some people who are born in the United States are not citizens. The Constitution could not be clearer that if you were born in the U.S., unless you aren't subject to U.S. law, and that's like the children of diplomats, people with diplomatic immunity. But except for those like extremely rare individuals, it's very clear if you're born in the United States, you are a citizen. Doesn't matter what your immigration status is. Doesn't matter what your parents' immigration status is. If you are born here, you are a citizen. And if the Supreme Court, turns its back on the clear language of the Constitution there, that would be very, very scary.
What are the chances of that? I mean, because look, I go back to that statement, nothing will stand in our way. And I understand, all politicians talk about, we're going to do what it takes, and we're going to fight, and we're going to do all this stuff. But that's what is still within the guardrails of the rule of law and of the Supreme Court and all of this stuff. I don't think Trump believes that he's confined by any of that. And this birthright citizenship thing is I think really, as you put out, the bellwether of where things are going to go, and maybe how the next 3-4 years go. But I'm really concerned about that.
I mean, I'm concerned about it too. And I mean, I guess there's two questions there. I mean, one question is, what is the court going to do? And like what I've been trying to ask myself on that is, where are the issues where the Republican justices have historically not aligned with what Trump wants to do? So like the idea that there isn't birthright citizenship is so extreme that, even people on like the lunatic fringe of the federal judiciary, people like James Ho, Trump judge on the Fifth Circuit, have said, oh, yeah, if you're born in this country, you're a citizen. So like I have some optimism that the Supreme Court's going to do the right thing there. There's a few other issues. The Republican justices, for example, have generally been very sympathetic to the idea that states don't have to assist federal law enforcement. So like if ICE wants to round up a bunch of immigrants, federal law or state officials can't like surround the building and prevent ICE from entering it. But the federal government also can't order the state officials to help them. The state officials could say, we're going to be neutral. We're not going to participate in that at all. So I want to see if the Republican justices continue to hew to that position. Where I'm going to get really worried is if they start walking away from things that they have said in the past about limits on the federal government. But then there's this. Oh, go ahead. No,
and this is where my question comes. Let's say the Supreme Court does what you believe they're going to do and upholds birthright citizenship, but Trump goes, don't care. We're still grabbing up everybody. We're putting them on the big bus or a big plane, or we're marching them out of here, and they're gone. Who can stop him? What's the recourse to stop him from doing any of that?
I mean, it is an excellent question if he decides to go there. I mean, Trump has been acting generally as if he thinks he is immune from politics. Like, if you look at some of the things that he has already done, like all of these pardons of like the January 6 offenders, or like he just pardoned some guy who used to be a massive drug dealer or like facilitate all sorts of drug sales online. And historically, the reason why presidents have not pardoned people like that is that if you pardon someone who tried to beat up a Capitol police officer, it's likely that person's going to go on and commit another crime, and that's going to blow back against the president. Like, people are not going to want to vote for a president or, vote for a president's party.
Okay, so, because he's not standing for election again.
Right. Well, but I mean, if politics still works in the United States, the way that we fix this is that in 2026, there's going to be another election.
Right.
And if Trump keeps doing things that are this unpopular and have predictable consequences, if he's actually sending federal law enforcement agents to kick down the doors of churches, I mean, maybe the Supreme Court will say that violates the religion clauses of the First Amendment. But even so, like, who wants that? Like, I mean, the reason why presidents historically have not kicked down the doors of churches is because people care a lot about their faith. And, there's political blowback if you do these kinds of things.
Yeah, but let me ask you this, because, I look at the immigration issue as depending on where you align, which color hat you wear in this day, you're for or against it. And I think the churches have also done this. I see churches are even less diverse than they were 20 years ago. So, I can see my red hat friends who go to a certain kind of church being all for it. They're the ones who bring guns to church. So, I just see this as another one of those things where our divide is very clear.
Yeah, no, the divide here is real, and I don't want to minimize it. And, it may be that, some churches react differently. I mean, the Catholic Church, for example, has a history of getting very prickly when, the government interferes with things that it feels should be the domain of faith. The Democratic Party got itself in a lot of trouble, for example, with things like the Obama era birth control mandate. And that led to essentially 10 years where you had top officials within the Catholic Church, pushing against the Democratic Party. The Catholic Church also has a position that's very pro-immigrant. And so if Trump, kicks in the doors of Catholic churches, you could potentially see that same backlash. I mean, I don't know enough about internal church politics to know how the Catholic Church will react. But again, the sort of things that Trump has already done, some of the things that we're talking about here are the sort of things that, if we have normal politics still, if elections still matter, if these are the sort of problems that I would expect to get fixed in the traditional way. We just vote in the other party, and then these policies go away. The question is what happens if Trump is right, because he seems to be acting as if ordinary politics don't apply to him anymore. And then, we're talking about the kinds of resistance tactics that have been used in authoritarian nations. And, hopefully it does not come to that.
Yeah, no, but one of the first things that came up was the whole TikTok debate is up again. And It was, ironic because as my son pointed it out to me, he's like, didn't he start this? Wasn't Trump the beginning of the whole ban on TikTok thing? And then Republicans kind of picked it up, and Democrats came along and they passed a law. Biden signed it. And now it's at the Supreme Court, unanimously decided, and it's decided. It's law. It is what it is. And yet Trump's going, maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, Trump famously doesn't really care about the policy so long as he thinks that he politically benefits. And I understand why a politician wants to have a bunch of TikTok influencers who, feel like they owe him a favor. I understand the politics of what Trump is doing.
Yeah, he's the savior.
Yeah. However, if I were the lawyer, so what the federal law actually does that we're talking about here is it prevents U.S. companies from providing services to TikTok. So that's things like the Apple Store, or the Google, or the Android Store, where you would download the TikTok app. It's also web hosting services. So there's a question of whether U.S. companies can provide web hosting services to TikTok. And if I were the lawyer for any one of those companies, what I would tell them is this. I would say, Trump does have the right to order his administration not to enforce any particular law. That's something that any president can do. They can say, and that's something that happens all the time. But Joe Biden, the Biden administration had a memo to ICE officials, for example, which said, we want you to prioritize immigrants who have committed serious crimes, immigrants who have engaged in terrorism, and we don't want you to be doing raids on immigrants who have not violated the criminal law. And that sort of prioritization, that sort of enforcement discretion is something that presidents can just do. But the TikTok statute, the one that's supposed to require ByteDance to sell the company, the one that prevents all these other companies from doing business with TikTok, the statute of limitations on that is 5 years. And so if I'm a lawyer for Apple or Google or Oracle or any of these companies that are doing business with TikTok, what I'm going to tell them is, look, Trump may not decide to enforce this law, but 4 years from now, we're going to have another president, and we don't know what that president is going to do. And you're going to be within that 5-year statute of limitations. So my advice is do not do business with TikTok, because if the next president decides to reverse Trump's policy, you're in a world of hurt.
That's something. But that again comes back to, does politics play into this? And I've got friends who don't believe there's ever going to be another election. And I'm sure you will allay our fears that there will be another election in 2 years, because I don't see them going that far. Or do you?
I mean, I guess what my answer is I don't know what's going to happen over the course of the next 4 years. I mean, maybe 3 years from now, I am trying to get a top bunk in the detention camp that we've all been thrown in. I mean, maybe that happens, but maybe what happens is this looks a lot like the first Trump administration, where he bumbles around and a lot of people get hurt in the process. And like, especially a lot of immigrants suffer. And like, there's a lot of policies put in place where, that I don't like and that you don't like. But at the end of it, we have a normal election and the Republican Party loses. Like, that could also happen. And so the only thing that I know how to do at this point is wait and see.
Right.
And like try to make intelligent choices based on what is happening. And like, I don't want to minimize the possibility that we have some terrible outcome. I don't want to like tell people that they shouldn't be alert and they shouldn't be alarmed about the possibility that U.S. democracy is in terrible danger. But I also don't think that we should act under the assumption that we're all living in Berlin in 1942 right now.
Yeah, because, look, everyone's losing their mind over Elon Musk doing whatever that was, and Trump not putting his hand on the Bible, and I've got all kinds of crazy responses to those incidents, and I'm going like, look, stop following your tail. I don't care what kind of clown show they put on. What I want to be focusing on is what they're actually doing, because unlike the first Trump administration, they have come in with a very well-written, well-thought-out, think tank-approved game plan, and the moneyed interests know what they want out of this administration. The CEO class has bought in, and they're going to be in charge. So for me, that's what we should be focusing on. So I'm curious over the the next 6 months, year. What are you looking? What are you watching? What are the milestones or the markers that you're looking for to find out which direction we're going?
I think you've just got to look at the specific policies they're implementing. So if you look at the executive orders that Trump issued on the first day, they tell a pretty clear story. Like, he was very aggressive on immigration, including that terrible birthright citizenship order. And like, we've always known that Trump doesn't like immigrants, that he wants harsh immigration policy. And so like there, they do have a very clear plan and they've already begun to implement it. Some of those orders were just like stupid crap, like trying to change the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Like what I mean, come on.
Pure jingoism, pure, that kind of lose your mind, wave the flag. Here's some red meat, stupid.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I'm trying very hard not to fixate on stupid. Like if they want to do something stupid that doesn't impact anyone's bottom line and that doesn't throw anyone in jail, like, I don't think that we need to, be worried about like vague stupidity.
Yeah, I've been actually thinking about making T-shirts with, with a goofy Trump face on it with golf, GOLF of America on it, and kind of a joke on it, because this is just ridiculous. Because it isn't. I got to tell you, I drove by the gas station. Gas price actually went up a little bit. Eggs actually went up a couple pennies. I'm still waiting for my buck a gallon gas and 99-cent eggs.
Yeah. And then there's like the third category of executive orders are just really, really vague. Like some of them are ominous. They hint that something could be coming. Like, one of the biggest, potentially most important changes is he's trying to make it easier to fire civil servants.
Right.
And like, you don't want that. Like, one of the reasons why we make it hard to fire civil servants is because you want civil servants to have the ability to, without fear, say to their boss, I am not doing that because it is illegal. And so, that could be very frightening, but I want to see what they do with what they do with it before I reach, any final conclusions. There is like an executive order dealing with like free speech online and like who's allowed to post and what like interactions the government can have with social media companies, which could lead to a bunch of like scary crackdowns on former Biden administration officials, or it could amount to absolutely nothing. I'm waiting and seeing. There was a memo that the Justice Department put out today that's gotten a lot of attention in the press that has a single paragraph suggesting that the Trump Justice Department may prosecute state officials who don't do enough to support his immigration policies. And like, there's lots of ways that would be unconstitutional. I am waiting to see what that, I read it and I said, that could be really scary, or that could be nothing.
Yeah, well, let me ask you something on that. If you are a state official and the federal government does come after you, does the state defend you, or do you dig into your own pocket to defend you?
So, I mean, before you even get to that, a lot of the time the state will it's called indemnification. A lot of the time, if a state official is sued, the state will pay the bills. It depends on the state and depends on the lawsuit. But like, before you even get into that, so like, there is a doctrine, and this is a doctrine that the Republican Supreme Court justices have historically really, really liked, called the anti-commandeering doctrine. And essentially what the anti-commandeering doctrine says is that the federal government cannot order state officials to like do something that the federal government wants them to do. So like, let's say that there's a building and ICE thinks there's a bunch of undocumented immigrants in that building that ICE wants to arrest. ICE has a right to go into that building and arrest those people, assuming that they have a warrant and they've otherwise complied with the Constitution. ICE is not allowed to order the state and local police to help them in that raid. So like, the state and local police have an absolute right to say no. Like, that's a federal business. Federal government, if you care about that, take care of it. Where it gets a little hazy, and like, this is what the DOJ said in that memo, is if state officials try to actually obstruct the federal government. So it would be illegal if like the governor of Illinois, say, ordered the state officials to surround that building and prevent ICE from entering it. That's no different than like George Wallace standing in the schoolhouse door trying to prevent integration.
Right.
Like,
that's where my mind went.
Right. Exactly. So like, if in fact all that the Justice Department is saying in that very vague memo is we won't let you obstruct, we won't let you do the equivalent of like sending the state troopers to prevent black kids from attending Little Rock High School, well, that's how the Constitution works. Like, state officials can't obstruct the federal government. But if they are trying to step on that anti-commandeering doctrine and say that state officials could essentially be drafted into a federal cause, that's unconstitutional. And so I don't know which one of those the Trump administration is going to do. I'm going to be watching it very closely. And, if they do one thing, I'm going to say, well, I don't love the federal policy, but like, what's going on here is not authoritarianism. It's not trampling over the Constitution. If they actually try to conscript the state officials in and the courts allow them to do it, that's very worrisome.
Very worrisome, and something for us to keep an eye on as well. Ian, as always, I appreciate your expertise, your insight. I'm sure I'll be asking you to come back and break down some of this stuff more in the future. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you, Rick.
Our good friend Ian Millhiser. I want to hear your thoughts. If you're in church and they come kicking in your door, what are you going to do? I want to hear it. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1936. That was the day when 20 laborers who were part of the Civilian Conservation Corps got involved in a type of labor they probably never expected. The Civilian Conservation Corps was a program established by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt to get young men back to work during the Great Depression. The program employed men ages 18 to 26 to complete public works projects across the nation. CCC crews planted nearly 3 billion trees, constructed 470 fire towers, built 97,000 miles of fire roads, and constructed facilities at 800 parks across the nation. But snowy weather had ground work to a halt in Allegheny County, Maryland. The men of Company 324 were at the 15-Mile Creek camp waiting for the weather to clear. That's when they received a distress call. A woman was trapped due to the snow. She was in labor, but the 3-mile-long access road where she lived was impassable. Even worse, the state's snowplows were busy digging out other roads. The men of the CCC answered the call. 20 volunteers shoveled the snow by hand, working well into the night so the trapped woman could make it to the hospital to deliver her baby. In total, 30,000 young men working in 200-man crews participated in the CCC in Maryland from 1933 to 1942. Due to its proximity to Washington, D.C., the state was designated the first core area. The CCC men helped to build campgrounds, pavilions, and hiking and skiing trails that greatly enhanced the recreation landscape of that state. But for one woman, they were remembered for helping her when she needed it most, during the birth of her child on a snowy day in January. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So I got to tell you, I think of the new Trump doctrine, the nothing is going to stand in our way doctrine. Not even churches, not even the church door were not. And this is amazing to me, because you would think the people who, I guess maybe this is why he didn't put his hand on the Bible. If you need a reason, and I've got a bunch of people throwing reasons at me, but the fact that, now the church door is not something that will stop them. And you think about the idea of church sanctuary, the concept of sanctuary, dates back to biblical roots. Old Testament stuff where people trying to get a fair trial from evil forces would run away and be held until they could get attention to get a fair trial. This is something we learned very young in school. I mean, you think about the early Christian practice, 4th century, the Roman Empire times when, early Christians used the church buildings as places of sanctuary to get away from, Constantine. And my head is just running through the history of what we're now trampling. I mean, 5th century medieval times and the Council of Orleans and just stuff that, kind of precedent that we would have never allowed, 12th century English law. More recently, I think, the civil rights era, where the civil rights movement here in this country, where activists and blacks sought refuge in their churches. Now, look, we blew some of them up, but, the fact that was a place of sanctuary, we're now no more. Now, as the caveat is, well, he needs a search warrant. Yeah, and that's going to be hard to get with Trumpian judges. So for me, again, as I said, I've been saying all along, the solutions are going to come out of the savagery. Are you okay with, going to your service on a Sunday, having to look over your shoulder that maybe someone's going to kick in the door. Maybe someone's going to come storming through and checking your papers while you're in the pews. I mean, it's quite remarkable that we're even talking about this. But a big part of me believes, this is messaging. This is scare tactic stuff. This is telling people who are here in an undocumented fashion, sorry, you will have no place where we won't come and get you. And this is about psychologically scaring people. We don't even have an immigration policy yet that's workable. So, but instead of figuring out how we fix our immigration issues, what we're going to go do is we're going to do big displays to appease the base. To say, hey, we're going after them. Those people who wash your dishes and clean your hotel rooms and pick your crops and do all the work that already corporate America is whining they can't get done. Yeah, that's who we're going to go after. Now, look, nobody is against the idea of going after criminals. If you're a violent criminal in this country, if you got to go. But now we're talking about people who were born here. We're talking about dreamers who were brought here. We're talking about upending lives in communities because of a good PR display, and going going to break the bounds of sanctity within a church. Look, I've said before, I'm not an overly religious person. I have my faith, but I'm not a corporate religious person. This, I got to tell you, this kind of goes against everything that someone of faith should be behind. So if you're a churchgoer, you should be appalled by this, but not surprised, because this is who they are. Again, showing you who they are, because you're the folks who voted for him. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. You okay with it? I want to hear. You miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast wherever you get your favorite podcast. You'll find ours. And always, thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.